What is loneliness, if you could define it?
It's when you don't feel worthy.
Stress in itself, we know, is not a mental health condition, but it can lead to a lot more other conditions, right?
For example, when you talk about loneliness, the depth of it can really differ.
So it's not just a state of mind, you're saying there's depth to it. It's almost like people have forgotten how to have fun.
We have just gotten used to the idea that spending 8 to 10 hours in office is okay.
It's about having pointless conversations.
Friendships are most promoted when you have consistent, pointless conversation.
Because when we are trying to impress, we are suppressing what we really are. We are just expressing what the other person wants us to know. Right?
But feeling lonely carries an idea of emptiness, a disconnect. It could even reach to a point where you start feeling insecure, or you start feeling disconnected from the world.
Nowadays, everybody's talking about Bangalore and water crisis. It's something which is catching the common eye. But the same people who are talking about it might just be lonely in their life. It's not talked about much, but it's an understood reality now. In metropolitan cities, in a lot of non-metropolitan cities, it's become an understood reality to just accept the fact that you're going to be lonely at some point
Yes,
in your
it's
life.
a developing reality as well.
Yeah.
The numbers are increasing, the realization is increasing.
So usually the two kind of people who, if somebody is really, really dealing with loneliness, who they would go to is first is a psychologist.
Hope so.
Right? We have Varun Kaul, who was there on the last podcast as well. He has a decade of experience as a practicing psychologist and the owner of PEAL Health, right? And he was there in Adulting Mastishk. He kickstarted that segment and it went amazing. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation. And we have Dr. Syeda Tasneem, who's now working with Recoup as a practicing psychologist, and who also recently you have completed your PhD.
Yes.
Right. How does that feel? And what was that about?
So my research topic is on mindfulness. So we have introduced me and my guide together, of course. We introduced our own mindfulness intervention technique, which is MBDBT, mindfulness-based dialectical behavior therapy. So getting that accepted by the board and all of those things took a lot of time initially, and then doing it on and my research participants were IT employees, because we realized that IT employees, that there were a few reasons we chose IT employees as the sample size, because Bangalore is an IT hub and we'll get a lot of research participants that way, I thought. But I started during the pandemic when I started my research study, and it was really very difficult for me to get the participants because most of them were working from home that time. But then I did find that there was a lot of stress, and mindfulness did help them a lot. So stress in itself, we know, is not a mental health condition, but it can lead to a lot more other conditions, right? So before it gets into oxidative stress, where it is affecting the other parts of where it is physiologically affecting you, it's always important to address that. So mindfulness does that at a very primary level, and it goes beyond that.
If you could explain mindfulness in a nutshell, what would it be? Is it practicing awareness of where you are?
Yes, it is practicing awareness of the current moment without judging it, without pushing away the thoughts that are bothering you. Usually with obsessive thoughts, it works really well. And it goes much more beyond that. It's not just, a lot of people think it is just meditation, but it's not just that. It's a very scientific approach which helps you to stay in the present moment and not get carried away with something that, we do have racing thoughts in our mind a lot of times, right? And we don't even think, it just happens on autopilot mode. So mindfulness is just the opposite of autopilot mode, where you enjoy everything. Like, for example, if you take something about food, a lot of us just take food, grab something on the way, we have it and go, which is not a good practice at all. How many times do we really stop and try to smell the taste, smell the odor, and try to see the color of the food items that we are eating? We normally don't do that at all, right? We don't even look at it. But if we do that, we don't overeat. So binge eating is again another thing that is very popular right these days, because of which people are not able to have that control over their appetite, and all that has something to do with the mind, right? Our connection with our mind is something, I mean, the mind body connection. So if we identify all of those things, mindfulness really helps with all of these things. If we start
Right.
using everything in mindfulness.
Focus has a lot to do with
Yes, focus,
contentment. When
concentration,
you're
awareness.
totally concentrated on something, it does increase the fulfillment that you experience from that experience. I've also seen that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So after that, after somebody seeks therapy, somebody who's grappling with loneliness would go to a community in Bangalore, right? Somebody would want to go to a community and be a part of it. And that is why on the other side of this panel, we have Karthik, who has more than a decade of experience as a community building consultant. And you're also the owner of Anubhava, and you have worked in building Listener Circle, Solitude Collective. How has your experience been in building communities in Bangalore and helping people deal with loneliness?
Hey, thanks at first. Thanks for hosting this podcast. It's wonderful to be here. So it's not decade long. Maybe the battle with loneliness could be more than decade long. So, like you started with a story. Probably I would also start with a story, right? So, you mentioned that probably you crossed your mid-20s and you're grappling with loneliness and stuff. So my story is quite similar as well. So I moved to Bangalore in 2012, right after graduation. I was 21 years old. So when you move right after graduation in Bangalore, half of your college is in Bangalore. You go to every other street, you find a friend. That's how it works. So what happens, as years progress, people move abroad, people leave cities. So that happened. I started losing a lot of friends. But what also happened was, I went through a really tough personal time. Through like 2015 to 2017, I lost a bunch of closed ones. So there was an erosion uh, in friends circle, and then there was this tough times coming year after other. So then I was in a very lonely space, and I was just drifting, right? I was just drifting, and somehow, somewhere, I found an event. I went to Atagalata and I attended it. The event was just a discussion circle on something, but I felt, it kind of helped. So that, gave me a thought, why isn't there a space wherein people can just go and talk what they want to talk, just express, right? So that start, led to Listener Circle being formed in 2018. It's been about 6 years now. So I've been, from then on, knowingly or unknowingly, I've been building a few communities. So right now, community building has become my mainstream work. But over the years, it has been a journey. So, but talking about community building in itself and the relevance of it, so I guess there are multiple things needed uh, in many ways, right? For example, when you talk about loneliness, the depth of it can really differ, right? For example, there are people who would really need a clinical intervention, right? Because
Depths of loneliness.
Yeah.
So it's not just a state of mind, you're saying there's depths to it.
absolutely, right? So there are so many depths
Wow.
and layers to loneliness. So and it see, at first everyone is unique and everyone cope with things in our own way, right? For example, there could be depths of loneliness where you really need clinical intervention, right? So there could be surfaces of loneliness or layers of loneliness where a clinical intervention might not be needed, but a community can help. A community can help. So right, like she said, talking to strangers gives that uncanny comfort, because it's not because they do not judge. It's because even if they judge, it doesn't matter, because you're not going to face them tomorrow, right? In your own circles. So my experience, by directly or indirectly hosting a little more than 100 events in Bangalore over the years, mostly centered around building circles and communities. So I guess, expression is a very core part of our human being, right? For example, all of us would love to express, and all of us would love to have connections. I guess over the time, what has happened is, knowingly or unknowingly, our spaces for authentic expression has dwindled largely because of variety of reasons. Probably when you go to work, you are expected to wear a certain mask, and when you're in home, you wear a certain mask, and then even when you're in social media, which is a place, supposedly a place wherein for authentic expression, it's just a space for impression, right? So I think we live in a world. So borrowing these words from one of my friends, so he says, largely we live in a world where impression has taken over expression, right? So what I try to do as a community builder is creating those spaces of expression where people can come and express but need not impress, right? So that's all that I've been doing with the help and support of community. So to answer your question shortly, as a community builder, rather than community in itself, I guess it's about people having a space of their own to express, is what I feel.
Why did Solitude Collective work? Why was there that warmth in the air? Everybody felt it. What is the secret here?
So first, uh, addressing your question on why Bangalore is like this, I'll give you a very funny thing that one of my friends said. I have a friend who largely hosts events in Chennai, right? And so she had to come to Bangalore and host an event. So she came here. It was a different type of a circle. She hosted an event, and then she went back to Chennai. I had a call with her, and then she asked me, Karthik, why in Bangalore, whenever I talk to anyone, the first thing that they say is what they do.
That's right. Even I felt that.
Yeah,
right.
so the first thing that they say is not where they're from, how old are they, what do they like. It's the first thing is what they do. What am I in my profession, right? So if you really, that's very true, because Bangalore currently is a place, it has a lot of floating population, people who come here, work, a lot of dreams and ambitions, right? So one thing is, Bangalore is largely professional centric in many ways, right? So that has its own consequences, and there are multiple events and cultures that exist in Bangalore. So for example, I'm someone who lived in Bangalore for 12 years. Bangalore has a piece of everything, right? Probably when you go and live in Indiranagar, your life is very different. When you go and live in Pina, your life is very different. Bangalore has a piece of everything. But particularly coming to the events, right? So it's, you attract what you ask for, right? For example, in my experience of doing 100 plus events in the city over 5 to 6 years, if you brand it right, you get the right people. My experience has been that, the instances wherein, so if you do an events, who are the possibly not so welcome people? Creeps. To people who want to come and poach people for MLMs. These are the two kind of people whom you do not want in your events. In my personal experience, we have had very less instances of that happening, because if you brand it the right way and if you resonate the right way, it resonates with the right people and people come. Because in my experience, if you brand it right, it largely attracts a very broad-minded and like-minded audience, which is what happened in Solitude Collective, right? So the instance a creep or someone who's selling MLM comes into Solitude Collective is very less, because you strike in a pretty different level.
It's a very mixed crowd also that
Yeah,
you have. Like
yeah.
the crowd that you had there is across age groups. But I'm not kidding. I saw one person who, I was on a survey, but I saw one person in pretty much almost all the events. And I saw this person talk and hit on like some 16 people in that process. And I saw this person also almost indirectly force somebody to go with them, and that became an issue. This is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Right, and it's happening. So how do we okay, so this actually opens out into psychology. So Bangalore is a city where traditional community bonds are disrupted, right? Traditional community bonds are disrupted because the sense of community that you have because of the language being the same or the ethnicity being the same is there in different states, but Bangalore is so mixed that it gets disrupted here. It is a place which has long working hours. Everybody is almost always busy. In fact, I would like to put it this way, that Bangalore is not a city, it is an office. In
Like
fact,
I said, the IT hub.
it is an office. It is one large office where all the roads and parks are the workplace. And we are not citizens. We are not human beings. We are colleagues. All of us are colleagues. Even in events, right? The way when we talk to each other, in your event, actually, I felt different. But otherwise, there's always this colleague approach when you meet a person in the city. It's almost like people have forgotten how to have fun. And it's real. Like, it's just, I don't know, like, there's a word for it in Hindi. I can't use it here. Everybody knows what that word is. And I've had so many people come across me saying, ki, yaar, yahan koi nahi karta, right? Yeah. What's happening? I mean, this is stuff, real stuff to talk about. Why is it? What's happening from a psychology point of view? And what is loneliness? How would you define loneliness? Two
I think
questions.
let's try to take it step by step. First of all, Bangalore is a cosmopolitan city, like Karthik mentioned, like you mentioned, that there are so many cultures intertwined that there's no one unique culture that stands out. So, in one way, it provides a good opportunity for different people to feel that they have a place that they belong, but it doesn't provide a good opportunity to anybody to feel they belong entirely. So you can come to an event, feel that this was a good event. Would you have a continuity of those events of those people? Not necessarily. Maybe you'll have to put in efforts that you've never put in. Maybe you'll have to put in efforts that you don't even know how to put in. So it becomes really, really difficult. Events like Listener Circle, Solitude Collective is coming up because there is developing a need that more and more of us are feeling very lonely in our lives. We are, I think, approaching a life with a view that we are doing the right thing, we are following our dreams, we are doing everything right, but the consequential emotions that we are expecting, that I should be feeling fulfilled, I should be feeling happy, I should be feeling productive, that's going away. That's why these opportunities, these communities become very, very important. Now, I would like to look at it from a point of view that's brilliant, that there are people like Karthik who are trying to do this and you are sustaining this. At the same time, agreeing with you that it's not easy. It's very, very difficult to sustain that. But like you rightly said, in an event of maybe 10 people, 2 or 3 people could be not really the right, appropriate kind of people in that setup. But I would still look at it that 70% is. And eventually those 70%, if they hold their grounds, they will filter out these 2-3 people. One-off cases could be really difficult to manage. It could be unfortunate that somebody has enforced their inappropriate behavior. But most of the time, I would like to believe that it builds on. This sense of loneliness is so different from solitude that we don't understand. In fact, solitude is a beautiful concept. I think we all should open up to it, experience it, and explore it in our life. But feeling lonely carries an idea of emptiness, a disconnect. It could even reach to a point where you start feeling insecure, or you start feeling disconnected from the world.
What is loneliness, if you could define it?
In my view, and maybe using a bit of psychology, it's when you don't feel worthy. You don't get a sense of value for yourself, and that kind of adds a lot of negative emotion and negative experience of your existence. So it is not necessary, loneliness is not a physical concept. I could feel lonely here. Let's imagine right now there's an insecure part of my anxious part of my mind which is really assessing, what am I doing here? This is not going well. I'm not worthy of being here. Am I sounding smart enough? And that is coming from my loneliness, because maybe I'm not getting enough validation. Maybe I don't have enough meaningful connections in my life. And that could have come into my life because I'm trying to build a very productive life. Like we're talking about how so many professionals are coming here to follow their dreams. We keep forgetting that we are ignoring our emotions, we're ignoring our humanity in the name of striving for a professional dream. And eventually, when the professional dream is either achieved or you're midway, then you can't just jump back to humanity. World has moved on, people have formed their connection, then you come back and say, hey, I'm here, make me feel wanted, make me feel I belong. It doesn't work like that.
And how do you feel worthy then? What is the result?
Many ways. If you have something going meaningful in your life, it could even be something as simple as a hobby that you regularly engage in. It could be a workout, it could be a pottery class, it could be a sports that you're a part of. Or the most important thing, I think it's very important to realize those few things that we used to learn when we were kids. Man is a social animal, and what I would like to add is man is also an emotional animal. So when you say that you're an emotional person and you're a social person, that means you need people. So the best kind of connection and the worst that you could experience is when there are other human beings involved. And the best that you could do for yourself is explore as many opportunities as possible so that you can filter out those not so good people and have few good people in your life where you start building a connection.
But nowadays it just seems like a lot of work, to be honest, because you're exhausted by 7:30. And that's the real problem.
But the
that's
question
happening.
is, Bharat, what is not a lot of work? We don't realize.
Exactly.
We don't realize. We have just gotten used to the idea that spending 8 to 10 hours in office is okay.
Does it seem like a lot of work because of social media?
Because we are not used to it anymore. Because we are never encouraged. When we are younger, we are growing up, nobody's saying, how much are you going to invest in yourself? How much time are you going to invest in your friend? It's always been questioned about. Even when I was young, going out, I had a playtime. I didn't have a fixed study time. If I told my parents I would study for 10 hours, they would probably clap. But if I say that I play for 10 hours, they'll say, what are you talking about? Play hours is only for 1 hour. After that, you come back, whether you're sitting at home, whether you're not doing anything, but you can't play beyond that. You see the psychological conditioning that we get used to. So we are all gradually, subtly, but very heavily conditioned to prepare for our professional life as if that's it. And when we start doing that, eventually we realize that there's so much more to life that even if we want to work towards it, our mind makes us feel this is hard work. Imagine which is harder, 9 hours, 5 days a week or more than that, or 1 hour per week.
But see, I have a question there, which is, okay, I'll come back to that.
Sure.
First, I'll ask you, what is your definition of loneliness? And then I'll be coming to you with the same question.
Like Varun rightly said, you can feel lonely even in a sea of people around. So that comes usually, like as he said, there is a lot of things. There are a lot of things like personal validation. You seek for validation, but the point that you seek for validation comes from the fact that you're feeling insecure. Why aren't you getting that validation from within? So there are two things, right? Intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. So we are constantly seeking for that extrinsic motivation, but that intrinsic motivation is lacking. So if we are self-content and we know that we are doing the best, like Varun rightly said, we are conditioned right from our childhood. Recreation is something that has not been given importance. It's always the professionalism, your academics, and all of these things that get all the importance, right? So because of that, now when we feel guilty to enjoy, we feel guilty to go around with friends and maybe take a break sometimes and not give that much time to your work and give more time to recreation. But then the point is, by doing that, we are actually not we're not giving much importance to self-care. And self-care is ultimately something that is going to help you with, say, longevity, to reduce your any other psychological conditions that you might be facing. This is something the recreation actually plays a vital role in all of these
So you're
things, I
saying
would say.
I've also experienced that when there's a lot of, when you take out time to care for yourself, that actually decreases the amount of loneliness that you feel in life.
Absolutely. You need to take care
Because
of
you
yourself.
feel, again, it's you feeling cared for.
Yes.
And it's you feeling worthy, it's you feeling validated
Yes.
as a mixture, if I can take this answer. So my answer to that would be, I always thought loneliness is the expectation to be with somebody. And I always felt that because when I'm working, right, most people, I think, okay, particularly in my case, when I'm working, I don't feel lonely because I don't have any expectation with anybody at that
Because
point of
you're
time.
content. You're
Right.
content with what you're doing.
So-
that is what kills loneliness. But you
So-
can feel lonely even in a crowd where, I mean, even in a hub of people where there are all like-minded people also, but then probably they are not actually the like-minded people. Like Karthik also rightly explained that people wear different masks, right? So we wear so many masks that once we go home, we don't really know what the real you are. What you really are is something that you yourself wouldn't know because you've worn so many masks all around. So giving that time to yourself, reflecting on yourself, what your passion is, what is it you really want from life, is something that can happen only when you indulge in self-care activities and something that you really love. It's good to be professional. It is good to pursue your dreams and all that. But are they your dreams, or are you conditioned to have those dreams? Is something you need to reflect on yourself, is what I would say. And once you feel accomplished and fulfilled in all of those things, I don't think you would feel lonely anymore. So that probably could be one of the definitions of loneliness, I would say, of
Okay.
not feeling lonely. I mean.
What is your definition of loneliness?
I think they bordered around this. So in my understanding, I've not studied it. It's from my perception and understanding, right? And my conversations with many people, right? I think there are, I feel, largely two types, right? One is social aloneness. Second one is mental aloneness. So it is what both of them mentioned. You can be around a lot of people, can still feel lonely, right? So that I feel is a mental aloneness. So social aloneness stems from lack of connections and lack of people surrounding you, right? Your mental aloneness is not necessarily because you're not surrounded by people. It can happen because of many reasons. So social aloneness can lead to mental aloneness, but it's not the only thing that leads to mental aloneness. So in my perspective, these two are quite distinctly different, right? For example, how can you solve social aloneness? By building meaningful connections, right? Which you say is a lot of work, which is a lot of work because everyone is busy in our own lives, right? But mental aloneness, the ways could be very different depending on what's causing that mental aloneness. For example, if that mental aloneness is caused by possibly you not having a great routine, it can happen, right? It can happen. So then fixing that routine can be a solution, right? So my answer to you is, first, I see aloneness as of two types of aloneness: social aloneness and mental aloneness.
Is it an expectation? Like, could you be with people and have an expectation? I mean, if it's an expectation to be with somebody, when you're with people, that expectation is gone. Then why are you lonely?
Yeah.
So then, if it's not expectation, if being worthy is a part of it, if self-care is a part of it, then exactly what is it? I think
Expectation has a role to play, definitely. That's your life view that gets attached to how you assess a particular situation. Like for me, fortunately, unfortunately, when I was younger, I would always be in a setup where I would somehow stand out. Now, unknowingly, that kind of became my expectation that this is how life should be. So, unfortunately, now what happens that whenever I'm part of a social setup, if I'm not standing out, I'm a loser there in my head. It's useless for me. So if I'm not standing out as a hero or somebody said, "Oh, Varun, you're so great," then I feel okay, I'm in the right place. But if I'm not, I feel disconnected. I feel that I did not do a good job. This is not a good setup for me. Is that natural for everybody? No. But that's how it works for me. But I need to recognize and understand that about myself. That's why she was talking about self-reflection, so that I could still tell myself this expectation is not real. This expectation is not healthy, and give this an opportunity, because if I don't, I'm actually not giving myself an opportunity. This is an effort or hard work, like you said, that we need to invest in understanding that this is good for us. It's very important.
Just to add, since you're also hovering around what exactly it is, I'm not sure, but then I think this loneliness in some ways is also emptiness. Difficult to define it because it's a,
like with anything with the mind.
yeah,
Like
anything,
he said about
yeah,
the
exactly.
depths, I
So
think it's the
yeah,
levels.
so it can happen out of many reasons, many ways, but in essence, I would say it is about a place wherein you're detached, right? You're detached, you're possibly withdrawn socially or emotionally, is the best I can come up with. Yeah.
So actually, this is where I would like to tell you my story, and from there I would open up the question, which is Article 51AH. Exercising our duty to scientifically discuss and how we can solve this in the city. So I was 16 when I came to Bangalore, and I always had a lot of friends. I was a very outgoing, as you can see by my personality, very outgoing person, very expressive, extroverted person all my life. So when I was 23, I think I had some 15 WhatsApp groups, right? One was college group, school friends group, this friends group, office group, Radio Mirchi group, this group, that group, parties, friends, events, everything. If that time somebody came to me and said, hey, listen, you'll be 30 one day and you would have no friends, probably one or two you talk to, I would be like, nikalna.
Exactly.
No one would believe
You
that.
can't even imagine.
You can't even imagine that, but I am there. So it's just sad. But
So in that group, did you have a few close friends?
I did. That's what I'm coming to. So one of them moved out, got married, and moved out to. See, first of all, everybody gets married at 28. Right? I'm 30. That's the damn thing. So I'm being practical. So one of them went to Canada. The other went to Dubai. The other went to. One is in Germany. One is doing his. He's a scientist in Scotland. The other is in Germany. So one is a startup partner. He went to Germany. The other went to Canada. So SS. And then the ones in the city, 2 or 3, they got married. And they barely have time. So, etc., etc. And the rest, just anyway, they were like not very close and they all went out. So, I was still fine till 28. By 28, I thought, okay, I should move out now because I'm living with my parents and there's nothing wrong in it. But I thought I can just move out and live by my own. All that. So, I moved out to a flat. And I think you also shared the story when in Solitude Collective. I was like, yeah, this is going to be great because you have that image in your head. You're going to be living alone now. You're going to do everything by your own and you're going to be your own boss. And there's no ma to come and say, ki, haan, ganda mat karo, wo mat karo. I was so happy. I moved out and I started living alone. As by definition, living alone. Right? I found myself in misery. Right? Absolute misery. Because I started questioning, first of all, I started questioning what home is, what a house is, because I didn't feel my flat was my house. Right. When I went home, I felt it was my home. But now it is not my home anymore because I moved out. So I don't have a home. And this has ethnicity or race that is a part of it. When I grew up in Delhi. So I always felt as a South Indian in North India, right? After coming, and there was a bit of that there. So I thought when I go to Kerala, that would be different. And this all becomes part of the Bangalore scene, that's why. But I didn't. Because I don't have that accent. So when I went to Kerala, now I didn't feel one with...
You were a North Indian
in South India, right? Exactly. And I felt very different. I couldn't relate. And I wanted butter naan and I didn't know where to find it. And it took me time to adjust to Kerala. This is not happening. And that was 15 years. It was a couple of months. When I came down to Bangalore, again, I felt, see, these things going on YouTube, this can go up to either virality or this will be up for debate. But the truth is this, right? This is what I experienced in my life. Once I came to Bangalore, I again felt a mix. Like, I don't know where exactly my house is anymore. Most people who have one particular native where they grew up with, they have a home, they have a sense of belongingness. I don't know where that is, right? So this is the time when I moved out of the flat, I started questioning what a home is. What is a house? What is a home? Spent a couple of months like this, and there's a time I started going out and I might have bumped into the wrong crowd that I was not comfortable with. I didn't know who I was shooting with. I'm older than most people I meet at events anyway. I'm closing 30. Most people are 24, 25. Nothing is happening. Things are going back this way. The only things I engage in is bike rides because I enjoy that a lot. I have a lot of friends in bike rides, but they're not close friends. Then, before this podcast, like the reason I took up this podcast is I think 2 months ago, one day, there were a couple of friends over, not close friends, just people I met. And I thought my cook was not there. So I thought I'll cook. So I went inside and I started cooking, right? And when I was cooking, I realized that I feel a lot of love. This is something that you can't explain. Like, I can't explain it to you. I felt a lot of love. I felt content. I was not feeling lonely that night. Not because people are there. There are a lot of people coming over to play PlayStation or to my house, but I felt, how do you explain this phenomenon? And why did that happen that night? And since then, I've been cooking for people. I just call whoever I can because I want to cook for them. Because when I cook, I feel love and I serve and I feel great.
I see there are many ways to perceive this and interpret this, right? So I guess loneliness is a place where it is static and inertia to move is very tough.
Right.
many a times, right? And I feel any movement helps. For example, when you probably went out and cooked, that's a movement. It's not static anymore. It's dynamic, right? It's dynamic. So as you do, as you move, probably you feel better. Because one weird thing, what I love doing is the part before cooking, doing dishes.
Even I do that. Even I enjoy that. I don't know.
That's one of the
I would have
most.
hated it at home,
Yeah.
but I enjoy it now.
Yeah,
What is that magic?
Because you got autonomy, right?
Yeah.
You are owning that. I mean, you are doing it not because someone has asked
Yeah.
you to do it. So that sense
Yeah.
of accomplishment is
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And nobody's asking you to do it. I'm
Yeah,
doing it because I love doing it.
Yeah, sometimes it's a fulfilling experience, right? It's a satisfying and fulfilling experience. Probably a plate is full of dirt and then you clean it and make it shine. It's a fulfilling experience, right? You create something when you cook. It's out of the ingredients you have. You have something. You have created something. So these things, are very subtle, but it does matter, right? It does matter.
So it's not always the professional
Yeah.
life that
Yeah.
you completed this project, so you
Yeah.
got this. It could be the subtle things in life, and we fail to notice these subtle things that actually give us happiness. That's where all the sorrow, depression, everything stems in, when we fail to notice the little joys in life. And that is the little joy in life that you came across with when you cooked.
So here I open the question because I wanted a realistic point of view. That's why I brought in state and ethnicity and language and everything. Because this is what really happening in Bangalore. There are people from all parts, different languages, different backgrounds. And as I think something that we arrived at is that there is emptiness, that's one state of mind, and there's fulfillment, there's another state of mind. So you talk to a person and you feel a sense of connection, there's fulfillment. You cook, there's fulfillment. For me, maybe. For somebody else, it might not work, but for me, yeah. For me, for somebody else, something else. How do we solve this in Bangalore? How can, I would like to have one perspective. How can we solve loneliness in Bangalore? How can we take people from emptiness to fulfillment, starting from an event point of view, community point of view?
So from a community point of view, right? So I have this view about Bangalore. Bangalore has a place for almost everyone. And Bangalore has a lot of vibrant communities, amazingly vibrant communities. So, I mean, couple of months back, I was attending an event. It was hosted by the author of the book Unboxing Bangalore, right? Who with a set of panelists who are community builders in Bangalore. So there is a community Kaban reads for people who read. There is a community for rock climbers in Bangalore. There is a community for almost everyone in Bangalore, right? So the communities are there. If you really come and see, if you open Book My Show right now, and then you look at the kind of the events that you have happening in Bangalore, not all are of great quality. There are so many.
How do you define quality? I was about to go there because I did that survey. Most of them, in my experience, didn't lead to a valuable connection except yours and one or two more. What do you mean by a quality community building experience?
So, see, a quality community, communities are about two things, okay? A community, any sustainable community should have a continual value. Okay. So what is a continual value? For example, let's take Solitude Collective, or let's take Listener Circle. So if you take Listener Circle, we have hosted close to about 100 events in the city. So what is a continual value? So let's say in Listener Circle, in our predominant format, people come in as either speaker or listener. So what is a continual value, right? For example, if the same person comes the next time, if he is a speaker, he or she can share another story, can express more. If they are a listener, they can listen to new stories. So that is what is continual value, right? So for example, you take Kaban reads. Today, this Saturday, you can go and read one book. Next Saturday, you can go and read another book. So communities that have continual value really sustains. And communities are also largely about expression. Okay, so communities, if you really take, going and reading a book is a part of expressing yourself. If you come to Solitude Collective and then you say how you feel. If you come to listener circle and say what you're going through, it's a form of expression, right? Authentic expression. So when you solve for that authentic expression and continual value, that is where great communities are formed. The second thing is, for example, one thing that I have felt worked in listener circle is, let's say someone comes to your community, how do you treat them?
Yeah, that
Are you treating them as commodities where you want to sell 100 other things, or you're treating them humanely?
And one organization in Bangalore which is doing that, it's Small World. You feel like a commodity there.
Yeah.
Like when you enter, the moment you enter, they're like, "Ha, sit." And before that, I would just like to mention, this is solely from my perspective and experience. What I spoke about Small World, no offense. This is only for the viewer and just for you, that how to help you come out of loneliness. So that's why I informed you about Small World, what I had as an experience. But Karthik, the problem is that friendships take time to form, right? It's a bond. So most of the event format, right? When you talk about the event format, where anybody who's viewing this right now would be, when they're in Bangalore, they think, "Acha, let's go to a couple of events and make friends." The event format gives you a framework where you can interact with other people, but it leads to social connects. But leading to a bond, it's rarer, because either that connection is not there or the time given. So when you said continual value, right? Even with coven reads or other such events, when there's an activity involved, I think you only said this last time, right? When we were having tea, that when there's an activity involved, there's no space to communicate and converse.
Yeah.
So and also once you go to the event, since if you don't follow up, now you're not able to form a bond. There's no friendship.
Yeah.
And to the person who's watching this right now, or somebody who's actually grappling with loneliness, it's real, because you're left in the city and you have nobody every weekend. And social media adds pressure, because you see so many communities where people are like chilling and dancing, and you're the only one now in the flat who's sitting alone. So how do you tackle that?
Yeah, so this is one of the problems that I'm actively thinking and trying to work through Anubhava to solve through authentic and genuine ways. So, but my counterpoint to you would be, friendships and meaningful connections are not supposed to be formed in one or two events, right? For example, take probably some of the great connections that you have. This is where the instant gratification comes in, right? Can you make a friend by bumping on them in an event, right? For example, let's say I have seen people make a lot of friends through listener circle. I have made so many friends through listener circle, but that didn't happen in one event. It happened because you go to an event, you find some people. So second, for example, right now, people come to a meetup and they disperse, right? So that is the problem with communities also. For example, let's say we have done this in listener circle. You put 20 people who attend an event in a WhatsApp group, people will slowly face attrition and that will become dead, right?
So that's why you started Uno.
Yeah, so that's where we want to experiment a bit, because any community that doesn't add new people doesn't thrive, because people keep leaving. Right? So a community which has to thrive has to add people. So, but coming back to your question, for connections to be formed, it's a slow process, right? So, where events will come in and work is getting you to those crowd, right? Getting you to those crowd and stuff. But if people who have made great friends in listener circle, these are the people who keep coming back to listener circle.
See, but what I'm saying is, the reason I actually disagree here is that I think most communities are focusing on forming connections, but how do we break out of that and focus on forming friendships? Because that is the need of the person who's coming to the event. Like, I think there's an important question to be raised also, is that I also experienced, like, your event was fantastic and I actually formed a good friend from there. But most of the communities are focusing on forming connections and selling out, if you know what I mean, if I put it naked out there. How do we change this thinking process, and how do we come up with a community that focuses on forming friendships. The reason I'm saying this is all of this starts from actually I went to Ooty, and there's this. But I told you about last time we were discussing it. There's this community called Badiga community. They still have the tradition of dancing around a fireplace every evening. I had tears because it's amazing. They've still protected that tradition where most of the elders and people, because this conversation doesn't lead to the 23 or 24-year-old in the city. This also goes to the 60-year-old, or there were 50-year-olds in your.
Yeah. So I'll answer that in two parts, right? So coming back to that tradition that you say in Ooty, every evening is the core.
Exactly.
Every evening, right? So it's not built in a day, right? It's every evening. That's a core. But the question that you asked before, like how can communities promote friendships and connections? So one thing, if you did in the Solitude Collective, what we experimented was this closed four people conversations, small breakouts, right? Small breakouts where, see, for example, when you get into an event wherein 20 people talk, we host a bunch of events like that as well. Everyone doesn't get as much space, right? To because it'll largely be hacked by the extroverts, right? And if you host an event wherein two people talk to each other, that goes in a very different direction. So I think a key would be giving a authentic space where just three or four people, five people can have conversations. I guess that would really break many boundaries because when you are, so I feel so that was one experiment that we did, right? I guess it would need much more like that. But the point, see, everything boils down to this: how do you really create spaces where people can come and express themselves authentically, have conversations, and can keep continuing having those conversations. I think so. The solutions could look in many ways, right? But then it will boil down to this, is what I feel. Because currently, if you see, many activity oriented communities doesn't promote conversations, and even if conversation happens, it happens in a large group where the potential for friendships
Is nil.
it's almost close to nil.
Almost close to nil.
So how can you create those smaller groups of 4 5 people in offline?
So here the thing is, the friend I made from that community, you know who that is? He's you might remember the tall Delhi guy, right? Yeah, we literally just hit it off on Butter Naan. That's all. And we decided to we became great friends after that. And he was not from my group. He was from the other group. We talked after you took us out and we had a cup of tea. So I would like to add that. See, the community experience that I had was fantastic. But after that, when you took us out and we all had tea and we all talked to each other and it was more casual and there was no room and we were not inside. That's when we broke up under that tree. Remember?
Yeah, it was the way to keep continue having the conversations, right? So I'll not take a lot of time, right? So I told you this during the event, right? For example, one of the things, I am someone who was born and brought up in a tier 3 town, have so much exposure to villages. So it's about having pointless conversations. It all boils down to having pointless conversations.
And
right?
also, I think natural. You don't need to be in a room.
Yeah.
I've seen this. When you're in a natural environment, conversations are easy and they're flowing. And also, from our survey, what we found out was friendships are most promoted when you have consistent, pointless conversations.
Yeah, because most of the time we are trying to impress.
Yeah.
And that's where we lack expression. Because when we are trying to impress, we are suppressing what we really are. We are just expressing what the other person wants us to know, right? So that's the reason, probably, I would say. Even as you said, the larger groups. So within the larger groups, also we have these smaller groups. Like as you said, we just started with the point of a butter naan. So that is something that you both enjoyed, and probably he was in a circle where he didn't want to be, rather than what he. I mean, he was supposed to be in a circle, but he wanted to be in another group, maybe. So that's where both of you probably connected with each other, and then he just broke open speaking about things. He didn't feel he would be judged, or he didn't feel he had to create an impression with you. So probably that was maybe something that the point where you got a good meaningful connection.
Yeah, so actually, the reason I picked this up is this comes from the whole old Indian tradition of katha, right? Where you talk about pastimes of God and that. So it got picked up from there because when in a in a friendship bond, since we did the survey and everything, in a friendship bond, when you feel a sense of friendship towards a person, it actually comes from a space of pastimes. It doesn't come from anything specific agenda conversation.
Yeah.
You just talk about each other's pastimes and you have pointless conversations, and in those conversations you start forming a
Yeah.
bond,
Right.
right, on a continual basis, as you said. I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah.
a big key we gave out in the podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
So from your point of view, this actually opens out to both of you. One more thing that we found out was that you don't feel lonely when you feel valued, when you feel accepted, when you feel understood, and when you feel belonged.
Right.
Right? These are the four useful. Belonged and useful. You're useful to somebody, you're needed by somebody. These sensations or these feelings, they lead to not feeling lonely. In a group, it might be with a particular, it might be an office floor, it might be a group, or it might be anything. How, from a psychology point of view, what attitude must a person have that we can have this, we can build this?
So if you're not meeting the ideal self values, then you don't feel valued.
Right.
So there shouldn't be too much disparity between your real self and ideal self. So that is something that would help you.
What is the real self and ideal self?
So the real self is what you really are, and the ideal self, I could say, ideally, I want to be the Prime Minister of India. So there is
it's
a
a
lot
dream.
of disparity
Okay.
between my real self and ideal self. So the goals that you set for yourself defines what your real self and your ideal self is.
And does that
So-
derive worthiness from our own mind for ourselves also?
Sometimes it derives from the other person's maybe it comes from your parents, where your parents like, for example, I always wanted to, I mean, it's not like I always wanted to be a psychologist, but I ended up, and I'm really happy about it. But if I wanted to be an astronaut and my parents wanted me to be an engineer, so that would be a real disparity, right? So I'm doing something that my parents wanted me to be and not what I really wanted to be. So in the journey itself, if I explore what I really want to be, and that is coming from internal intrinsic motivation and not something that someone else has wanted me to be, then probably there will be less disparity between your real self and your ideal self. So
This actually reminds me of Three Idiots for some reason. Sari umr hum mar mar ke ji liye.
Exactly,
Singing the
yes.
songs, feeling alone, and then finally
yes.
the death.
And ideal self is not really just limited to your professional idea, but it's
Yes.
also like a moralistic characteristic that you carry. That this is how I see myself as a person. Let's imagine I believe if I'm a good person, and then it's very easy for my mind to ignore 2-3 incidents. Maybe one day I was rude to you. So Bharat thinks I'm rude, but I have 4 other people who think I'm good. So I'll retain that idea that this is who I am. So if you come to me and say, hey, Varun, you're rude to me, I'll probably defend that you don't know who I am. I am this person because I'm living up to that image that this is my ideal self. But in reality, I'm a mix. There are times I could be rude. So it's very important to understand that none of us are supposed to be our ideal self. We strive for it. And acknowledging objectively your reality allows you to be more real with yourself, allows you to continue to strive for that ideal self, and at the same time not be delusional or blinded by this idea that this is who I am, because that's very limiting. And that's where we start distancing ourselves with people more and more.
This ideal self, this could lead to loneliness.
Anything could lead to loneliness.
No, in the sense that I see this a lot,
Yeah.
where people set a benchmark for themselves. I've had this with my brothers, with my friends, where they said, "मैं ये करूँगा, उसके बाद मैं इसको मिलूँगा." Yeah,
Of course.
I have achieved this, and then I'll meet my family or
So
friends.
then if you get fortunate enough to reach there, then you're able to build connections as soon as that happens. But imagine you're taking time.
Exactly.
Then you're building disconnection. You're withdrawing from people. You're focusing on yourself. And the world is moving forward. They're moving away from you. Like, in fact, I wanted to say this when you spoke of cooking. It is believed to be a therapeutic process. I recommend it to most of my clients. And I just started thinking about it with you, that why is it a therapeutic process? I just realized it's a very wholesome process. Like he rightly said, you create something out of
Cooking
something.
is a therapeutic process.
It's a therapeutic process. I've recommended to so many clients, if you're into cooking, start cooking. And thanks to you, I just realized what happens there. Imagine picking up ingredients. You're so patiently in the kitchen. Kitchen is a smaller space. Like it might be you might have a big kitchen, but you are still limited to a part of the kitchen, right? You're not moving around all the time. You're patiently waiting for things to be done by you, things to change, evolve, change its format, and you're doing this. So when you're doing this, you're actually sending very loving signals to yourself that I tend to invest time. And people who are able to cook just while cooking, not engage in talking to someone or listening to music or other thing, they are sending beautiful loving messages to themselves, being very very patient, loving that. And then you see something getting created, you feel the aroma, you feel the taste, and then it fills your hunger also. And like in your case, you fed other people or offered it to them, and if they just smile at you and say thank you, you're filled with that joy that you feel belong. It's a beautiful process which can be done independently, or if you have people to extend it forward, amazing, wholesome process.
And that is mindfulness. So he
Mindful
explained
cooking.
it.
Wait,
Mindful
so
cooking.
I think we have arrived at a conclusion. So the idea is to identify things that lead you from emptiness to fulfillment,
Absolutely.
and then
Absolutely.
fill your life with those. And it could be mindfulness, it could be cooking if it works for you, like it worked for me.
And prior to that, I would like to mention that we all need to realize that if we don't, the consequences are dire.
It
We have
is.
to acknowledge. See, it's like saying that, okay, I believe in fitness by going for a run. She believes in fitness by going for yoga. But we can't say we don't believe in fitness. We can't, like, if you don't do anything for your physical fitness, life will not get worse. So if you don't do anything for your loneliness, for your social connection, life will get worse. It will get really difficult. So figure out your model, but recognize that social fitness, mental well-being is very, very important. And like I said, we are social beings and we are emotional beings. So we have to figure it out accordingly.
Yeah.
So that social connectedness is really very important. And meaningful connectedness there plays a vital role in all of these.
So again, because it leads to fulfillment for a person, again, subjective, I would guess.
Yes, very subjective.
Yeah. So I would just like to add finding things that leads to fulfillment. Let's say you call it as finding your things bucket, right? So the second bucket is finding your tribe. Finding your tribe. So these two are distinctly different. For example, finding your things to do. For example, I go for a run every morning. I feel so good. That's finding my thing, right? Finding my tribe is the social aloneness part. How do I really get meaningful connections or friendships or for that matter, right? Finding my tribe both has its own difficulties. More so, finding your tribe has a lot more difficulties in the context of where we are all in Bangalore. For example, it's easier to get on a cooking routine or a running routine than to go find your tribe. So I guess, yeah, it's a little more difficult process, but I guess it is also equally important because you also feel belonged there, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was such a fulfilling podcast.